Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Joseph Johnson with Ultimate Athlete Concepts, and today I'm joined by Jeff Moore of DC Sports Training, who's helped us out with a lot of our different podcasts and informational kind of gatherings. And today our special guest is Martin Bingisser, who is an Olympic thrower now residing in Switzerland and throwing for the national team there. He's coached by one of our authors, Dr. Bondarchuk, and has just a very unique experience that he's gone through in his career as a thrower, first starting out in a conventional way, and then eventually meeting Dr. Bondarchuk and having Dr. B coach him from that point going forward. So he's got a very I would say one-of-a-kind experience in the contrast between the American approach, if you want to call it that, and then going over to the approach that Dr. B uses. Two totally different things, and he's did it midstream and changed his career, and obviously he's improved his throwing. So welcome, guys. Jeff, thanks a lot for helping us out today. Martin, thanks for joining us all the way from Switzerland, and it's a pleasure to have you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So Martin, I think the first time that I had encountered your writing, I think it's probably been at least 10 years now. I think you had written an article while you were still living in Washington in the States. I think you were throwing over in the States, and you had kind of come across, I think, some of Dr. Bondarchuk's informational articles. You correct me if I'm wrong, but could you kind of tell me the genesis then, from that article, how you'd encountered that and how did that all evolve?
Yeah, no problem. Just one little correction. When you introduced me, you said I was an Olympic thrower, and that's been a goal of mine my whole life, but haven't quite reached that yet. I've been at the European Championships and other high-level meets, but what drives me is trying to be an Olympian even when I was younger, and that's what drove me to try and meet Bondarchuk and learn as much as I could about the sport and about the event to see what could take me from being frankly, a mediocre high school athlete in the state of Washington, where I was born and raised. I was, top 25 in the shot put in the state, which meant, in the U.S. I was ranked in the hundreds and nothing special. But by the time I finished college, I was sixth in NCAAs. And now I'm competing at the international level, and it's just been that quest to try and figure out how to become a better thrower. And to do that, you have to learn from the best people. I started out as a shot putter, and I had met some people who encouraged me to do the hammer throw because it's a cool sport. If you guys out there listening and you want to try it, shoot me an email. I'll point you in the right direction. But as I started out, I had to coach myself, and I was trying to figure out what's the best way to do this. And even when I was starting out in college, I had a pretty good coach, but hammer throw wasn't a specialty. So he gave me a lot of leeway on what I did and let me try out different ideas. And every time when I was researching, that led me back to Bondarchuk. He was an Olympic gold medalist himself, former world record holder in the hammer throw. But he's, besides that, the most successful coach in the history of hammer throw, but also in the history of sports, frankly. And from 1976 to 1992, his athletes won every single medal in the hammer throw, with the exception of 84 when they boycotted.
And they would have won those too.
Exactly. So everywhere I looked, everyone pointed back to Bondarchuk. I got my first little taste of him when I was studying abroad in college. I took a semester off and went over to Vienna, which is a great gateway to Eastern Europe. And on my free weekends or weeks I had open, I went to Belarus one week, I went to Hungary one week, I went to Slovenia for 1 week and was training with some of the top throwers in the world. And a lot of them were trying to apply Bondarchuk's concept, so I learned from it third hand. When I came back, I basically sought out every single article I could find, a lot of it from ESS's old Soviet journal. Trying to find the resource online wasn't really that practical then. This was 2003, 2004, which, the internet was full and strong, but there wasn't a whole lot of information from the 80s up on there. But I would use my library, use everything I could find, and try and assemble a picture of what he was doing. And that's when I put out the article, or I at least posted a draft of the article online at the time, which basically just brought together all the different resources I could read about Bondarchuk into one one overview of what are his methods. And right about the time I was ready to finish that and publish it, Bondarchuk moved to Canada. And this was in 2005 then. And it took me another 4 or 5 years actually to finish the article then, because right as with everything in life, once you think you know it, you don't know it. And once I thought I knew it, then I actually met him and I realized, yeah, the basis I have here, but there are so many more details. This is so much more complex. And I went up and visited him a few months after he got there. I did a week training camp with him. My coach came too, and at the end, he offered to write my training program. So I said,
yeah, that's a no-brainer, right?
That's an easy answer. And from there, I was in Seattle. He was across the border in British Columbia in Canada. So it was a 4 or 5 hour drive, and I would make the drive once or twice a month until I was done with college, then moved up there for a couple of years. And every time I thought I knew it, then I learned something new. And I finally published the article a couple of years ago, but there's even more I've learned since then. And I had to make it broader than the original intent, but the goal was the same. I wanted to learn about the hammer throw. I wanted to learn how to train right, and you got to go to the people who know how to do it. You got to learn from the best.
Right. So when you kind of encountered him, you went down there and had him helping you with the training. What surprised you the most?
I had, as I said, done a lot of research, so there wasn't any real eye-opener. But it just validated a lot of the stuff I had seen. So for instance, one of the things is the amount of throwing they're doing. They're throwing twice a day. And that, you can read it on a piece of paper, but when you see them out there training twice a day, 5-6 days a week, it really opens your eyes. The lifting I had been told was, more faster explosive lifts, but it was even faster and lighter weights than I had imagined, because I tried to create my own program based on this on my own and was probably overtraining myself because I was trying to do 2 workouts a day with a lot higher intensities than they were doing. And I had some success, but it didn't really take off a lot. And that was one of the things, is I was just trying to do too much.
Yeah.
The same number of workouts, but a higher intensity each workout just doesn't work out.
So with that being the case, I like to always talk specifics because I think the general stuff is nice to know, but I like to talk about what are we actually going to do, so that way we can dissect what actually is getting done and how's it transfer. So from all the conversations you and I have had, I've talked to Dr. Bondarchuk, myself, a lot, with him being one of our authors. You guys mostly train only in the 60 to 70% range. And correct me if I'm wrong, never train in the 90% range and only a little bit in the 80% range. Is that correct?
That's correct. The only time I've maxed out or tried really hard above 80% in training in the past, since 2005 when I started working with him, is when I went off plan and did my own thing. And every few years you get an itch and you wonder, if you do so much of medium intensities, do I still have it? Do I still have the strength? Yeah. And I'll play around and throw a few extra weights on the bar. But, he never has prescribed that in training. That was a big shock. Because like I said, when I was doing it myself, I was thinking, okay, lightweight, 75, 80%. But, we're often doing 65%. Stuff that, it doesn't always feel like you're getting a workout in, because it's pretty easy to move the bar. Yeah. But
so with that being the case, then so being in the 60, 70% range, did that kind of rattle you for a while, like mentally? No,
I'm not. I was never a real strong guy, and I'm not weak either, but I'm not a guy who's got a 400-pound bench press or who's just a gym rat in that regard. So I love throwing. That's why I like the sport. And so focusing on throwing more fit perfectly with the elements of training I like. For other athletes in the training group, I think it's been a bit more difficult, especially the ones that have come from the background, just, kind of you grind yourself down until your better approach. Squatting, 10 sets of 10, real, or even just, working real high intensity stuff too. It's a bigger change of mindset, and you have to really buy into the program. And I've seen people come and work with him that they can't. And so after a year or two, mentally they can't stick with the program, and they don't. If you don't buy into a program, no matter how good it is, you're not going to have success.
Right. Now, when you got there, and after you've been there for a while, you and I have talked about this before, where some of his concepts they might seem complex, and then in other cases they might seem very simple, but what's underlying it might be totally different. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, on the face value of what we're doing isn't that complex. I mean, we're throwing a lot, we're doing a lot of special strength, and we're lifting, and we're doing everything we do in training. The focus is on transfer of training, making sure that what we're doing will make us better hammer throwers. And so, in that sense, it's the simplest thing you can do in training. But behind that is years of experience, coaching thousands of throwers, and even working with him for 10 years now, I'm still finding out little nuggets. Even that question, why do we lift lower intensities? I always kind of assumed that was a preference of volume over intensity. If we're doing 10 workouts a week and we're doing lifting at 10 sessions, at each session, at the end of each session, we're going in the weight room and we're doing at least 20, 30 minutes of lifting. You can't be lifting 100% in the squat because you're not going to have time to recover from that. I always assumed, okay, we're a little bit lower intensities just for recovery's sake. And, you work at 70%, 5 sets of 5 or 3 sets of 5, you still get good strength gains from that. But, I'm talked with him more over the past year or two, and he just came out with the book you published, Olympian Strength Guide. And, he goes into a lot more of the reasoning behind it. And it turns out a lot more complex. But then again, it's more simple because he's saying, hey, there are different types of strength. There's, maximum strength, you have starting strength, you have explosive strength, speed strength. He lays them all out, and how you train them, it's a different protocol. If you want to get strong, you need to lift heavy. But if you're trying to get fast, again, look at the transfer. You need to see what exercises are going to help you get fast. Is doing a bench press 100%, moving the bar, inches a second going to help you get faster? Is it going to be lifting 60% with, 225 on the bar and just exploding out and getting that speed where it's a lot closer to the shot put where you're throwing 15, 20 meters a second, I think. In the hammer, we're throwing 30 meters a second. So it's trying to figure out, you can go into the details of the fast twitch and slow twitch and all that. But in the end, it's, hey, we want to move a hammer fast. Let's move the bar fast. So,
right, exactly. That's not overly complicated. I think the idea that needs to be maybe gotten across is that, some of like if you're using an Olympic lift like you referred to earlier, the idea is on the nervous system is to have somewhat of a global effect, if you will, on the nervous system as a whole. Obviously, it's going to be on the parts that are moving the bar, but on the nervous system as a whole, getting more a powerful impulse, to the motor neurons and to create this overall body explosiveness. And then your more specific exercises, correct me if I'm wrong, are the conduit to take that and put it onto the actual throw. It's kind of a chain effect. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, Derek Evely, who's another real coach, very Bondarchuk influenced. He trained alongside or coached alongside Bondarchuk when he first got to Canada. He likes to say, the Olympic lifting, the squats, those are preparing us to train.
Yeah.
And then the special exercises they're taking it into the throw. So you have to be fit enough to be able to train. You have to have that general basis, and that's what the general exercises are doing. And then the special strength, the throwing the hammer, that's actually converting it into the results.
So when you and I have talked before, because we have a somewhat of a kind of a similar background. I've been at it a little bit long. I'm just older than you, but I've been doing this about 20 years. I'm the old dog now. It's kind of weird for me too, guys, because I'm used to being the kid in the room, and everybody else, Doc's 40 years older than I am, and Dr. Yesus and Anatoly, all these guys are way older than me. So I'm used to being the kid who shuts his mouth while we're in conversation and just listens. You know what I mean? Don't say anything because it's going to be stupid, whatever I come up with. So now I'm the old guy. This is a strange deal for me. But you and I do have kind of a similar background in the sense that, me being with Doc, like you referred to earlier, I thought I had a handle on what was going on, and I would do stupid stuff. I wouldn't tell him, but I would be doing stupid stuff in my workout because I thought I knew better. I came from that mentality of, well, that can't be enough. And if that's good, well, if I did more, then it'd be even better. Or, raise the intensity, it'd be better, right? It's always better if you do more. And I did that for years. I mean, stupid stuff. And because sometimes what he gave me looked like it was too simple. And what I've said to people that ask me, I'm like, there's an elegant simplicity. You find out that when it was put together, he thought of everything. It looks simple to you, the package does, but you don't know what it went into it, the science and, the deep kind of ideas that went into putting that together. And I know you see this to be the same case with Dr. B as well.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot teach 50 years of experience. And, as much as I want to read all his books and I read everything he writes and I talk to him and try and pick his brain for everything, you just cannot get that experience. And that experience is what underlies everything he starts with. So, his starting point is going to be way ahead of anyone else's. And even if they know everything he's ever written, he can take that experience and add an extra layer. So when he gives you a program, I can try and come up with a program for my athletes, but I'm based on the writings, and what he's doing is based on the writings and all of his experience. It's going to be even more in there, and a lot of the soft factors, a lot of the kind of the art of coaching type things, where I can look at all the calculations and formulas and pull together this and that, but he's also be able to take that and use his intuition and combine it into an even better plan.
Yeah, and I found this to be the case with Dr. Yessis. He's been at this about 55 years now as well, and Anatoly is not too far behind. The one thing that it occurred to me, they've consumed hundreds of times more information than we have that was written originally in the Russian, let's say, for example, because I'll see them they'll reference people that I had never heard of before, people that they were reading and learning from. And the uniqueness was back then, at least when he was in the Soviet Union, is that he could call a specialist in biomechanics and say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. What do you think? How can we integrate? So he was pulling from all these different specialists, and he had a PhD himself. I mean, he was no slouch. He had a high-level education, as well as being a world-class, world record hold thrower and a coach. I mean, he's got this such unique, varied background. Of having done all the jobs and done them at a high level. And so, I'll talk to Doc about something. And this just happened like 2 months ago, I think it was. Now, here we've been together 20 years. And I said, what do you think about such and such idea? He goes, oh, yeah. He said, this is how it works. And he goes through it like in 2 minutes. He goes, you do this, you do this, you do this. I'm like, what? 20 years? You're just now telling me? He goes, yeah, what's the big deal? I don't remember you telling me this before. You never said it. I believe I would have remembered. And what it occurred to me is he's forgotten 10 times more things than I know or will know probably. And I think you probably experience the same thing. Sometimes you feel like mentally feeble, when you're talking to him, or, because you really think you're going to get a handle on it, but you don't.
No, what I see the most is, whenever any coach writes, they always write about what to do. They never write about what not to do. But that's all up there in his mind because he's tried all the different variations over the years. So you ask him, "Oh, why not use this?" He's like, "Oh no, I tried this. It does not work."
Right, we already did it. Believe me. And you're not coming up with no new ideas that he hasn't heard of before. So I finally, and I'm sure you have too, you just finally learned to relax, calm down, and just do what you're told. And, everything will work out fine.
Yeah. I mean, but that's not to say that they know everything, because they're always trying to find more. And that's one of the other things that impresses me about him is he's still reading, he's still writing, he's still researching, he's still experimenting with new ideas with his athletes. And he's in his mid-70s now. Most coaches could be retired. He could be retired, but he wants to make it even better.
You're exactly right. No, I've asked him. I said, so, had your ideas changed? I saw him it was in April, I think. And I said, and he had told me before there'd been periods of time where he'd re-examined everything that he had done. He kind of had a coaching change. And I remember asking him, and he's talking to me in his broken English. He said, as good coach, always change, always change. always, he said, I'm always, basically, I'm always thinking I'm doing something, how I'm going to do it differently. And it's amazing. Like you said, he's in his 70s. Doc is in his 80s. He is as active of mind as anybody I've ever met. And he's 81 years old. And he's constantly, kind of thinking, what can we do differently or whatever. So that being the case, let's talk. Taking all of these ideas, and he talks about special strength, and this is kind of a key distinguishing factor with him. Can you talk about that? Because in the hammer, it's a little bit kind of unique in that the movement is so fast, it's hard to break that up into parts. Could you talk about how you guys approach special strength with that?
I mean, the first thing that's big for him is, you can talk about strength, you can talk about technique, but in the end, it's one thing. There's no, when you throw the hammer, it's a technical movement and it's a strength movement, and you have to train them together. And so from the start of the year through the end of the year, we're throwing, and that's strength training for us, that's technical training for us, and that's more than half of our time is spent throwing. I mean, it's an extremely powerful movement. You've got forces, hundreds and hundreds of pounds there. And so some people might say, oh, throwing, how are you going to get strong? Well, I've had phases where I had no heavy lifting and only really heavy hammers. And afterwards, I was able to hit a max in the snatch that was a personal best. And, you wonder, well, how do you do that? Well, throwing hammer is also, it's a pull movement. And it's an explosive movement, and it's a powerful movement. So everyone assumes, oh yeah, if you get stronger in the weight room, you'll get better at throwing. But if you get better at throwing, you're also going to get stronger in the weight room. It goes two ways. So the first point is just understanding that the throwing movement is a strength movement, and put the largest investment you can on that. And he has his exercise classification system where it has kind of 4 levels. You have the competitive event, which for us is the hammer throw. For a basketball player, be playing basketball. Whatever your sport is, that's it. And the next level, you have specific developmental exercises. These are exercises where you're doing the same parts of the same movement. You're using the same muscles. You're just not doing the whole complete thing. So for us, it might be holding a plate out in front of us, and, twisting to the side. You're doing the turning motion, but you're not doing the whole complete throw. And this is a bit removed from the event, but it has a high transfer also. And so we spend a good amount of time here because there's only so much you can throw before the technique starts breaking down, and then you're going to get counterproductive. I said, put as much as you can to throwing, but there's a limit there. You don't want to be taking 200 throws a day. Even if you watch a baseball game, after someone gets 80, 90 pitches, their technique deteriorates, and it's going to start leading bad habits. So we spend a lot of time in that area too. The third category then is specific preparatory exercises. These are exercises where you're using the same muscles. We're using our legs, we're using our core, but we're doing different movements. So we're doing a squat, we're doing a clean, we're doing a snatch, we're doing crunches, we're doing things like that where we got the same muscles involved, but completely different sequencing, different movements. And then you also have general preparatory exercises. These are even further removed. This would be, going for a run or things like that. And they play the smallest role. But we have those 4 categories, and that's also the prioritization training. We focus most on throwing, and then we focus on the other specialized exercises, and then on the general exercises. And he's worked with thousands of athletes, and the transfer training books he's published with you, they detail a lot of the research he did with those athletes. He was sending them out surveys all the time, figuring out what are their best, what's working for them, what's not, and he's able to see, what's the transfer, and by looking at these correlations, you can say, hey, we have Olympic caliber shot putters with a bench press of 300 pounds, and we have guys bench pressing 500. And at a certain point, you wonder, okay, well, if you have that wide of a range and they're both able to get the same level, is that really transferring over to it? Yeah, you're not going to have an Olympic caliber guy with a 100-pound bench press, but you need to get them up to a certain level. But after that point, and you also look at his tables too. There's a good transfer for a lot of general strength stuff until intermediate levels, but after that, it's gone because at a certain point you need the special strength to go forward. We were talking earlier, I think about thinking about bench press. I was thinking about Kevin Durant. Again, this is another example. It's even clearer, in shot put and bench press. Yeah, there's some correlation there, but when Kevin Durant was drafted, he couldn't even do 185 in the combine, and he's not the only guy like that. I think Jamal Crawford was the same way, and there are a couple other stars. They couldn't bench press 185 at the combine, yet they come into the league and they're all stars from the beginning. So I think there, you can think, oh yeah, stronger's better, but is it? It's not really necessary to be an elite basketball player to have a good bench. He's gotten stronger since then, and he started to play better since then. But I don't think that's due to his bench pressing ability.
No, you don't bench press in basketball, and we've talked about this at length, amongst the people that are customers of ours and people that we associate with. I've said this many times. Look, Kevin Durant is a great example. So we look at all these different things: strength measurements. How did he do on an HRV score? How did he do on a functional movement screen? It's like, it doesn't matter. His checks keep cash, and that's the key. So if apparently the Thunder are fine with it because they keep paying him. And Under Armour offered him a $300 million contract, so apparently they're not worried about it either. And I think that's the key, is that here in the U.S. anyway, is everybody's so focused on, it was strength, and it still is, but now they've gone off and they want to get more fancy. Well, we're looking at his heart rate variability. We're going to see what kind of condition. Well, okay, but you've seen him play. You know he can play. So who cares? I'm not saying that it doesn't have a role, but by no means is it the guidepost. No. The guidepost for his talent is how much are they paying him. That tells you how good he is. Because teams don't pay guys that can't play. you know what I mean? And the guy who is the best player on the team, typically is the guy who's making the most money. And so, we've gotten, it's funny because we went from the old meathead strength stuff, and that's still prevalent, but now we got a little fancy. Now, can he pass a functional movement screen? This is really science now, and then HRV, now we're really getting scientific. And, they've got all these different tools and things they want to talk about. But the bottom line is, did they pay him or not? Or in your case, can you make the Olympic team? And can you get a medal? That's what matters.
In our sport, it should be the simplest, because at the end of the day, you have a number, you have how far you can, and you can measure yourself based on that. And still, there's the tendency to get distracted with the numbers in the weight room and to focus on that. And you need to be strong, but you also need to be a special type of strong. And Yuri Sedik's the world record holder in the hammer throw. He's, Bondarchuk coached him since he was young. Bondarchuk's last Olympics, Sedik won gold. He was coaching his own athlete to beat him.
Yeah.
And he was a strong guy. He was 160 plus clean kilos. So he's 350, 360, 375 clean, which is strong. But the Americans at the time were doing 400, 420. They were much stronger. So he was strong, but he wasn't the strongest. But he was beating Americans by 5 meters. And the reason for that is he could take plate twists. He could take a couple of 45-pound plates and do twists with them. I mean, his rotational strength is incredible. He could take a 10-kilo hammer, which is about 50% heavier than our competition weight, and throw it over 70 meters. And the U.S. champion this year, I think, was 73, 74 meters. So he's throwing this heavy thing almost as far as the top Americans right now. And it's to take that, implement and throw it that far, that requires strength. And it's not the type of strength you're going to measure in the weight room. It's the type of strength you're going to get through specific training. Yeah. And it's for each sport. I mean, this is what works in the hammer throw. His approach to training, different sports are going to be different. You ask him how he's going to train powerlifting, or he's not going to use a medium intensity approach there, obviously. The goal there is how heavy you can lift. And so right. That's the measurement there. So, a lot of people disregard what he's doing because they see one example of it in the hammer throw, but it applies differently to different sports. And the main thing in common is that you're always looking at what's going to make me better at my sport instead of what's going to make me better at the weight room or what's going to make me better in my flexibility or whatever the measure is. For him, the measure is always the sport and how do we transfer what we're doing into being a better athlete in that sport.
and this is something that I reiterate constantly to coaches that I help. All that matters is that we get better at the sport. That's what we're here for. So you got to cut the distractions out. Some of the other numbers are nice. They're indicators. They're kind of like economic indicators, in my opinion. It's like saying, well, unemployment's zero. Well, that might sound great, but in the Soviet Union, they had zero unemployment too, but everybody was broke. So, it depends on what you mean. Interest rates high or low could be good or bad, depending on what else is going on. So some of your numbers could actually be good, and sometimes they could be a negative. Your other measurement tools. I think one of the things that you brought out there is worth mentioning again is, Sadiq, he's still the world record holder. It's been 28 years, still the world record holder. And in every measurement besides the throw and the heavier throw, he was not the best in the world. He wasn't the best bencher, clean, snatch, didn't matter what it was. Any other athletic measurements, vertical jump, running, he was not the best. But he was the best in the thing that mattered. They gave the medal for. They didn't give medals for the other things. And I think that's what's critical, is that he was the best in the world at that. And he still is. And nobody's sniffing the world record. There's nobody even in his ballpark. There's nobody on the horizon.
And the athletes now are, the common retort is, okay, well, that was the 80s. That's a different era. But, it was a different era. But at the same time, the athletes now are stronger. They're, you have all this technology behind you. You have a whole bunch of advantages to athletes.
And there's more of them.
And they're still, 10, 15 feet away from him.
Yeah.
They could have. If you look at all those lists of his lifts, the top athletes now are well beyond that.
Yeah.
They've got all the indicators are there except for the measurement of the throw. So
the one that matters.
Yeah.
Right. It's like saying that the 80s are better or different with Ben Johnson. Well, Usain Bolt, where he racing against Ben Johnson today, it wouldn't even be close. It would look ridiculous. He's not even close. So I think it's all the more impressive actually that Sadiq did it in the 80s instead of now, because he has less, because there's, the population has grown significantly since then. So you just theoretically just have better odds of breaking the world record just by sheer numbers.
Yeah.
Leave alone all the others, like you said, technology, and the kids can do a lot more. Just the odds would say that you're going to produce a genetic freak in there, much higher level, than Sadiq was, just by odds. So I think that's a critical thing. Now, one of the other things that's really unique about what you guys do is the use of heavier and lighter implements. And this has kind of been a signature of Dr. Bondarchuk. I don't know that it was originally his idea, but I think he's the one that's used it the most and kind of really, its evolution has been has been done much under his guidance. Could you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, definitely. He's not especially nowadays, he's not unique in this using different implements, but he's very unique in how he uses them and the systematic approach he has to it. Like I was saying earlier, the majority of our time is spent throwing and training. But you run into an issue adaptation-wise. If you're just throwing the same hammer over and over, you're not going to continue to adapt to it. And so he basically uses heavier and lighter weight hammers as another tool to change exercises. We change exercise in the weight room systematically, and then we'll change what hammers we use. And then we have a new stimulus and a new way to progress there. I think the more common approach follows traditional periodization. In weightlifting, in the fall, you'll be doing, as I said, like 10 by 10 or, a kind of high rep, low intensity. And then throughout the year, you increase the intensity and you lower the rep count. And along with that, the traditional approach for throwing is you use heavier weights, higher volume in the fall, and you move to faster, lighter, more explosive throwing in the spring. So it kind of mirrors the weight room approach. And with Bondarchuk, sometimes we're throwing light implements in the fall, sometimes we're throwing heavy implements. On the outside, it looks like there's not much of an approach there, but if you look at it throughout the year, we don't if I'm throwing a 6 kilo hammer now and an 8 kilo hammer now, my next training phase I won't be throwing those. We'll switch it up. And so if you look, we're never doing the same thing twice in a row. There might be a little bit of carryover. Maybe we'll keep one implement for 2 phases, but for the most part, we switch it up every phase. But each time we have a different implement. We're working on a different element of training. And looking at the hammer is something that's not just a technical exercise, something that can be adjusted and included through training. I think is where he sets himself apart.
So, and I think you and I have discussed this before. There's not some kind of like general recipe used for heavy and light. It can be varied greatly. What I've read is he had tons of different combinations, if you will, or schemes.
Yes,
have you experienced that?
It's also very individual. So, part of the reason we change is just for change itself, but also we'll change to figure out what's best for the athlete. Some athletes in a practice, if you're throwing a light and heavy hammer, some athletes you want to start with the light hammer and then go to the heavy hammer. Because maybe your technique's better with the light hammer. You want to hit that right off the bat while you're fresh and explosive, and then finish up with the heavy hammer. But with athletes like myself, for instance, my technique's terrible with the light hammer because it's so fast. I just want to grip it and rip it. And so for me, sometimes it's better to start with the heavier hammer, have more solid technique, and then finish up with a light hammer so that I can carry that good technique over into something I'm not as good at. Even throughout the year and during the competition season. Traditionally, you would never throw something heavy, especially a 10 or 11 kilo hammer, which are on the very extreme range of what we'll be throwing. But for me, because like I said, I throw heavy hammers well, and I have better technique with that, I'll be using those real heavy things in the middle of the season, which I talked to the German coaches who are very old school over here in their approach, and it's blasphemy to them. They don't understand that. They won't even have a conversation about it because there's no way that can work. But for some athletes, it can work, and you have to experiment. You have to see what works for each athlete. Kidboy Johnson, he's the U.S. champion now. He trains with Bondarchuk. He'll throw up to 12 kilos in training. Sadiq didn't even do that. Sadiq's technique would, I haven't talked to Bondarchuk about this, but for me, the case is my technique breaks down. Kibwe, his technique, he can maintain the same technique with a wide range of implements. So that gives him more possibilities in training. You don't want to be doing something that's going to hurt your technique. So you have to see, can that athlete handle that implement before you use it? And just looking at all those individual factors, you see, okay, what works for people, and then you have a basic, a palette of exercises to choose from, and then you can alternate them systematically throughout the year. And then you also see, okay, what works best? Maybe you have 10 options, but 2 of them are great for an athlete, and then those are the ones you kind of keep as your trump card, and you use them, in Olympic year, in a time when you need the most benefit. You pull out those hammers that someone really reacts well to, and really get a good boost for music.
Yeah. So the key being monitoring how the athlete's performing and seeing, is this working? Instead of just going in there deliberately, okay, we're going to do this training plan. Doesn't matter. We're just going to do this. Dr. B's watching, and you got younger guys that you're helping. You're watching. Is this working? Are they improving? And this is what matters. Onto the sport. Is the throw getting, is it improving? And another key is how much improvement. Do we think we're maximizing what we could be getting here? Or maybe they're improving, but we think we could do even better. Maybe there's another tweak in there. Can you talk about that? Like, you're looking at consistent improvement over the long haul. You guys don't see big dips. Correct me if I'm wrong. You don't see a lot of dips in your performance. It's kind of more systematically going up, not evenly, but you know what I mean. It's kind of the trajectory is similar, correct?
Yeah, like I said, we have it a bit easier in our sport because we have a tape measure that tells us how good a shape we're in at that exact moment. And we use that every single training. We're measuring how far we're throwing, and that's the best feedback we can have because we can track every single day throughout the year. I can look back over the last 10 years and tell you what shape I was in each day. It's better than any HRV score. It's better than any, any feedback you can get. Not that other feedback doesn't hurt, and we use a lot of feedback. and the throwing result also isn't infallible, because maybe you threw bad one day because of a snowstorm you were in or something like that. So there are outside factors, but in the end, it's a very reliable metric. So that's a key to our training, is trying to get the feedback. What was the second part of your question there?
Well, what I was saying was, when you're looking at these situations, I guess I should say, you're constantly, looking at, okay, let's go and see. So one deeper question would be, is that at the level this athlete's at, is this the maximum we think we could be getting out of them, or are you, you know what I mean? Or is he saying, they're improving, but I think he can improve better? Is there something in there where, you may question, and you got younger guys that you're helping now too, so I could maybe directly just kind of, do you think that?
No, it's training an athlete with him is a long-term experiment, and you keep the records all the time, and you're able to suss out what works and what doesn't, and you're always trying to make sure you get the most benefit from it. If let's say you have a training program over a couple of months and you improve 2 meters, and then you have another training program where you improve 1 meter, you look at them and you see, okay, what did I do? What was maybe better in one or the other?
Yeah.
The problem is you have 10 exercises in each program, so you can't say it's one thing or another thing.
Right.
But when you do 6 2-month blocks over a year, you do 12 2-month blocks over 2 years, you can play around, you can mix and match, and then you have a better idea. Okay, this time I had the 6-kilo hammer with cleans and I improved well. This time I had 6-kilo hammer with squats and I didn't improve well. So maybe the 6-kilo hammer wasn't it. Maybe it was the cleans that was helping me out. It's just a lot of data analysis. It's a lot of tracking. And it's a lot of experimenting. Sometimes you just have to make an educated guess and go with it, and it doesn't work, but you can learn from it and you can see how to move forward. But you have to have the records to be able to know what's working and what's not.
I think the key takeaway is for coaches is this: look, you're still experimenting, because everybody's a snowflake. There's uniqueness to every athlete, to the level that they're at, their trainability. There's a genetic, kind of trainability, if you will. You know what I mean? Everybody responds to training differently, and at different stages in their career. So we always have to keep our mind on not looking at the record board in the weight room, but how are they performing onto the sport? And then if it's not there, we think we could be doing better. Let's make adjustments. Like you said, based on the history, how have they done in the past? How have they responded? And that's I think that kind of goes back to what you spoke about earlier with experience. You've been doing it for a while. Dr. B's been doing it for 50 years. He knows what he's seen over and over again. He's coached many, many athletes, obviously, and he starts to see a pattern. And this isn't in a textbook anywhere. This isn't something you read. This is what you've seen, which is totally different. And I think people got to take, believe me, I want you to read the books that we sell. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of that. I'm a huge fan of it, actually. But it is not the only thing. It's the bases. And then from there, like you said, you got to be watching to see, is this working? And then, and over time, I got this experience. Now I've started to observe that when I do this, my athletes do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then what makes it more complex is even once you figure it out, things can change. And I think that's a big problem and a reason why a lot of people get so focused on the weight room and the hammer throw and other sports is because, you take a 16-year-old, you get them strong, they're going to do well. So you think, okay, strength equals throwing far. Well, for a 16-year-old, it does. But for a 26-year-old, it might not anymore. So what worked before for an athlete at a certain level of their career might not work again. So you always have to keep experimenting. You have to keep tweaking things and seeing not only does it work, but does it still work? And will it keep working in the future?
Yeah, no, I think that's vital. Martin, we would love to talk more. We've kind of run a limit today, and I don't want to take too much more of your time, but we'd love to do this again. That is so unique amongst everybody. being an American and kind of being able to contrast the two ideas and your experience now as a coach yourself, which I'd like to talk to you about next time. So if you don't mind, we'd love to get back together here real soon and do this 2 or 3, 4 more times at least, because a lot to offer. And now you have a website, a blog, all that kind of stuff. Please tell everybody about all that. We'd love to direct people your way.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about this, I write about Bondarchuk, and also, I'm still on a quest to learn that involves trying to learn from all the good coaches. So I write on my blog Bondarchuk and what I've learned from others, and try and integrate that. And I have several other authors on there. Kidboy Johnson, the U.S. champion I mentioned, blogs on the site. We have some strength coaches on there. The one that's spelled a little differently, hmmrmedia.com. So you can look on there for some great resources on training. I've got some clinics that I've started to do. I just finished one in Nashville. I'll be in Southern California, Bay Area, and Seattle in December, and talking about these general things: special strength, transfer training, for both the pros and also for other sports, and what you can learn from that approach and applying to other sports. So you can find it on the website, hammermedia.com, and feel free to shoot me an email if your listeners have any questions. I'm an open book, so I'm more than willing to spend some time talking through these issues. Just each time I go through them, I learn a little bit too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can relate to that. And this isn't limited to just throwers either. I think that you're going to get a lot of great information. I've looked at a lot of Martin's articles. This isn't limited to throwers. There's a ton of great information because the principles still are the same. It's not, oh, well, he's a hammer thrower and that's the way he works out as a hammer thrower. The concepts, though, are applicable across the board. And I think that's a key thing for people to understand. So, don't let the thrower part throw you off. That's a nice pun, huh? But anyway, I did that all on my own. Don't, kind of realize there's a lot there. There's a ton there for you to learn from. So I'm going to encourage everybody to go check out Martin's site and kind of stay tuned. We're going to be doing this again here real soon. And Jeff, thanks a lot for facilitating this. Actually, Jeff's our technical advisor. Make sure I don't screw anything up. So he made sure everything worked right. And thanks to you as well, Martin. We really appreciate your time. Let's get back together soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man.